During the Troubles in Ireland, the south countryside of County Down in 1973 wasn't like the city wars up in Belfast. Forget the brick-to-brick fighting up there. This was a war fought on the back roads, between hedgerows and across fields. The Ryan Road, a winding lane near Mayobridge and Newry, cut right through a tight-knit farming community. No peace walls here, just ditches and shared fences. Protestants and Catholics were literally next door neighbours. They were close. Real close. By day, everything looked normal. Farmers swapped gear, they met at the local creamery, they drove the same narrow lanes to town. But once the sun went down, the area changed completely. The Ryan Road became a danger zone. No streetlights meant that every approaching car's headlights were a major toss-up. Is it security forces or a sectarian hit squad? To survive, you had to be hyper-aware, reading the land for anything out of place, a strange car or a sudden silence even. By 1973, the conflict had devolved into a gruesome practice called tit-for-tat. The old civil rights dreams were long gone, replaced by a simple, terrifying scorekeeping. Kill a Protestant, a Catholic had to die to even it up. Kill a Catholic, a Protestant had to go down as well. The individual didn't matter. The label did. It wasn't about strategy anymore. It was like a conversation of blood between paramilitaries, with ordinary people as the unwilling punctuation marks. The air around Newry was thick with a specific suffocating dread. The official death count shows a non-stop string of killings. The violence was incredibly personal. A murder in Belfast was a headline. One in Newry was the funeral you attended with your neighbours. The fear was up close and personal. It sat with you at breakfast and rode shotgun in your car. The army was everywhere, but they couldn't control the night. British Army checkpoints created traffic jams of delays and interrogations. Armoured vehicles lumbered along the main roads. Helicopters provided a constant pulsing background noise over the border, the place the military nicknamed Bandit Country. But for all the hardware, the gunmen moved like ghosts on the back lanes. The constant tension took a massive toll. Trust evaporated. You'd eye a neighbour's glance, wondering if they were watching you. A car slowing down outside your farmhouse at 2 a.m. brought on full-blown panic. This was the era of the no-warning attack. No knock, just a kick to the front door or a burst of gunfire through the windshield. The folks on the Ryan Road were basically holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable to arrive. The tit-for-tat cycle was a never-ending death engine. It meant you didn't have to be a fighter to be a target. For loyalist groups like the UVF and the Glenanne Gang down in South Down, the entire Catholic population was a target pool. Likewise for the IRA in South Armagh. Any Protestant with any link, however small, to the state was fair game. This logic completely dehumanized people. A man stopped being a dad, a musician, or a farmer. He was just a counter in a sectarian trade. The killings were like billboards. A murder was a message sent to the other side, with the victim's body as the communication medium. In 1973, this awful conversation essentially reached a peak in the border areas. The Newry murders weren't random. They were specific sentences in a long, bloody story written that summer. In a conflict where the government spun the official story and paramilitaries made anonymous calls, the songwriter became the best recording of the events. The news gave you the statistics. A 41-year-old man, a 21-year-old civilian. It never really told you who they were. The folk tradition in Ireland has always been an unofficial archive. In the 1970s, musicians in County Down stepped up as oral historians, documenting the real human cost of the Troubles. They remembered the names that official history would forget. They recorded the exact painful geography of the loss. Tommy Sands, a Ryan Road local and part of the successful Sands family folk group, lived this role. He wasn't an outsider looking in. He was writing from the absolute centre of the chaos. His song, There Were Roses, is essentially a primary source document, a forensic record of a specific friendship and a specific summer set to music. Sands understood that the real tragedy wasn't just the straight-up war between two sides, but the shattering of connections between neighbours who, in any sane world, would have stayed friends. The Sands family home on the Ryan Road was a céilí house. In rural Ireland, that means an open-door place where people gather to play music, tell stories and catch up. In 1973, the Sands kitchen was a safe haven. It was a no-go zone for sectarianism. The whole point of the céilí house was inclusivity. Protestant and Catholic farmers, who might have eyed each other warily at an army checkpoint, sat shoulder to shoulder in the Sands kitchen. The music, the fiddles and accordions drowned out all that political nonsense.
Well, I grew up on a small farm, as I say, and we were surrounded by neighbours of all religions. Well, actually, there's only two.
Sands recalls it as a place where Protestant and Catholic neighbours called in on their céilí with his parents, Mick and Bridie. The music was the ticket in, and its value held firm on both sides of the divide. The actual roses that are mentioned in Sands' song were right there too. They grew in an arch over a seat outside the house. They bloomed in the summer of 73. Silent witnesses to the coming and going of men who would soon be dead. The image of the roses is a powerful contrast to the violence, a stubborn natural beauty that couldn't care less about the human disaster unfolding beneath it. The unofficial archive musicians, like the Sands family, were the keepers of the community's memory. They channeled the trauma into the tune. When Sands finally wrote There Were Roses, a decade later, he was opening that community archive. This musical history captures details that official reports always miss. It gets the sound of the laughter on the road. It nails the exact fear of the car prowling. It captures the victim's desperate last-minute plea. It turns the cold statistic back into a person. The story of the Ryan Road murders centres on the bond between two men, Isaac Scott and Sean McDonnell. The song calls them Allan Bell and Sean O'Malley, but their real lives are documented. They were neighbours and friends, the perfect representation of the Ryan Road's mixed heritage. Isaac Scott was Protestant, and Sean McDonnell was Catholic. In the super polarised climate of 1973, their friendship was like an act of quiet rebellion. It wasn't a grand political gesture, it was just a natural relationship born of living in the same place. They ploughed the same soil, dealt with the same weather, and hung out at the same céilí house. Sands himself confirms that they were both good friends of his.
Someone said, no matter how close the troubles get to us, the wind changes. We're friends, we know each other, we work in the fields together. But one year from that day, things had changed. Songs with two people came to our house.
This was a three-way friendship, grounded in the area's social life and music. The relationship proves that the sectarian hate driving the war wasn't inherent to the people. It was something forced upon them from the outside. Isaac and Sean didn't hate or fear each other. They genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Their relationship was the norm on the Ryan Road, a norm the gunmen were hell-bent on destroying. The Allan Bell in the song, or Isaac Scott, was 41 years old in the summer of 1973. He lived in Bina, right over the fields from the Sands family. He had two key identities. To his neighbours, Isaac was a musician. He was a great man for the music and the dancing and the reels. He played in bands and loved the local dances and was a vibrant, essential part of the music scene. He played in bands and loved the local dances and was a vibrant, essential part of the social scene. He was totally woven into the community fabric. If you look up Isaac Scott in the Kane archive, and also in the book Lost Lives by David McKittrick, you get a quick glimpse back into time. To quote from Lost Lives, entry number 896, Isaac Scott, Armagh, civilian, Protestant, 41, single. 9th of July 1973, a former member of the UDR. He was shot by the IRA at Beleek near Newtown, Hamilton, as he started his car after leaving Tully's, the village pub. Another man was seriously injured in the shooting. The gun attack happened just after midnight. Isaac Scott and a woman having just got into his car when shots were fired through the windscreen, killing him instantly. It emerged some time after his death that Isaac Scott, who came from Mayobridge, was a former member of 3 UDR in County Down. His woman companion told the inquest she did not know if anyone in the bar knew he had been in the UDR, or that he was a Protestant. The following month, a Catholic man, Charles J. McDonnell, was shot dead nearby in an apparent reprisal. For Republican paramilitaries, a past or present link to the UDR, marked a man as a combatant. They didn't see the neighbour who ended up playing the accordion. They saw the uniform that he used to wear. This split was the lethal catch-22 of his life. He was killed not for who he was to his friends, but for what he stood for to his enemies. The Sean O'Malley in the song is referred to as Sean McDonnell in other versions of the song. The differences in names is worth mentioning real quick. From what I could gather, when Tommy Sands originally wrote the song, he did have the real names of the men in the song, with permission from the families of course. However, near the last minute, there was an understandable change and it was decided to change the names of the men in the song to something else to protect the families. However, in more recent years, the real names of the men are often sung instead because there isn't a threat anymore of the violence that ran rampant through the north of Ireland. Now please correct me in the comments if I got anything mixed up here. Going from the Isaac Scott, in the book Lost Lives, it mentions that Charles J. McDonnell was murdered in retaliation. The song mentions Sean, but just because I'm referring to the Lost Lives book and the Kane archives, I'm going to refer to Sean as Charles for a minute. Charles was 20 years old. Though he came from South Armagh, a Republican stronghold essentially, his focus was entirely on civilian life. He was a heavy plant driver, a young man just starting out. Sean was serious about a young woman named Agnes O'Hare, the Alice in the song. She was the centre of his world. They were planning a wedding for 1974. They spent their evenings together on the quiet roads around Newry and Mayobridge, often stopping in at Sands' house. Unlike Isaac, Sean had zero connection to the security forces. He wasn't in the IRA, he wasn't a political activist, he was a civilian through and through. His identity as a Catholic was the only reason the loyalists picked him. He was chosen not for anything he had done, but simply just to balance the books after Isaac's death. To quote the Lost Lives book, entry number 924, August 22nd, 1973. Charles J. McDonnell, County Down, civilian, Catholic, 20, single. From Carrowman and Bleak. He was shot in the head and chest after being abducted by armed and masked UDA-UFF men from outside his fiance's home. The couple were sitting in a car when the gang ordered him out, drove him a short distance away, then shot him 11 times from close range. As the gunmen took him away, they told his fiancée, "This is for Isaac Scott." The shooting took place not far from the Mayobridge home of Isaac Scott, who had been shot dead the previous month. Charles McDonnell's 18-year-old fiancée gave evidence at the inquest. She said, "We went to bingo and had just got home at 11:30 p.m. We were sitting talking about the wedding next year when a car drew up behind us. We didn't take any notice of it because I thought it was my brother coming home. Suddenly, the door burst open and the gunmen wearing masks ordered Charles out. They took me to go inside and the last I saw of Charles was when they bundled him into the back seat of the car. He didn't do anybody any harm. What am I going to do without him?" A man calling himself Captain Black of the UFF called a Belfast newspaper and accepted responsibility for the McDonnell murder. A detective told the inquest no one had been charged with the killing. See also Isaac Scott, entry number 896. After the murder of Isaac Scott, the Catholic community on the Ryan Road lived in absolute terror. They knew the score was uneven. This waiting period was often worse than the violence itself. It changed how everyone in the district lived. Men stopped leaving the house at night. Families slept in interior rooms away from the road. The sound of a car engine became a clear threat. Sands writes, "Now fear it filled the countryside. There was fear in every home. This fear wasn't imagined. It was entirely logical. Loyalist death squads were on the move. They were prowling, a word that perfectly captures their predatory patrols. They were hunting for their payment." One book gives a very close account of the details, and albeit shocking. The book, The Killing of the Reevy Brothers by Ken Murray and Eugene Reevy. In this book he is referred to as Sean, and in one chapter it says, "Sean and Agnes came home from bingo and turned down the Ryan Road where Agnes lived. They had stopped at Agnes' driveway and chatted about their wedding plans. But unknown to them, two people had climbed a tree beside the house and were waiting for their car to arrive. When it did, the two up the tree shone a light as a signal to start the hit. As Sean and Agnes chatted, two vehicles, which were seen to be driving around the local area earlier, pulled up behind, and then Sean was dragged from the car. One of the gunmen said to Agnes, 'This is for Isaac Scott.' Sean was driven up down the Ryan Road in Mayobridge for about a mile, close to where Isaac lived. The car pulled into the gateway, and Sean was pulled out of the car and put standing at a gatepost at Heslop's farm before being shot 11 times by a Sterling 9mm submachine gun. This was a standard British Army weapon at the time. Later, a burned out Ford Escort had been found around the laneway. It was stolen in Banbridge earlier. Sean's brother Gerard had told the author of the book in mention many years later that Sean's teeth were removed before he was shot. It seemed that they were trying to get information out of him, but Sean was just the wrong man to be asking. Himself and his family were never involved in any criminal or paramilitary activity. A doctor, Michael McVerry from Newry, had mentioned that Sean's death lasted 5 to 7 hours. Absolutely horrific. Somebody in the comments of one of my other videos, I think it was the one about Grace being the saddest Irish song, they mentioned that this song, There Were Roses, is the most heartbreaking. And when I started reading about it, finding the Lost Lives book, the Kane archive, the numbers, the amount of entries in the Lost Lives book, the killing of the Reevy brothers as well, it just got darker and harder to read the more I got into it. When I think of Sean McDonnell in this story, I'm just lost for words. His family, his young fiancée. He was so young and he had his whole life ahead of him. When you really stop to reflect on this time, the troubles in Ireland, it was truly awful in every sense. I grew up not far from this area, and now I was so young that I don't remember a lot, to be honest. But I do remember walking around town and suddenly having to go home a few times because there was a bomb scare or something like that. I remember this 5-year-old me walking around and looking at these black plastic bags on the ground, obviously just rubbish, but me thinking that there was a bomb inside it. Now, I don't have much experience of the troubles myself, so reading about stories like Sean McDonnell here just shocks me to my core, honestly. It's hard not to feel emotional about it. Sean McDonnell was, by all accounts, an exceptionally innocent young man, as noted by Ken Murray in his book, diligent and quiet. He helped his father, Charlie, on the family farm. His life revolved around the GAA, his work, and his girlfriend, with no apparent interest in political matters or worries beyond his path in life. The ballistic analysis of Sean's murder revealed that the weapon used was connected to 4 other recent loyalist paramilitary shootings. Their victims included not only Sean, but also the Reevies and many other innocent people. In time, it became more obvious that a sinister force was operating in mid-Ulster, comprising loyalist paramilitaries and the shadowy elements of the British state. RUC officer John Lindsay, accompanied by Constable Billy McBride, was among those sent to investigate Sean's killings. McBride was later identified as a gunsmith in an Irish government report by Judge Henry Barron. He was implicated, along with others, in supplying weapons to the UVF in Portadown. McBride lived in Bena, near Isaac Scott's home. The heart of the Ryan Road tragedy is the friendship between the 2 dead men. Sean McDonnell was not Isaac Scott's enemy, he was his friend. Sands captures this irony in the song's most gut-wrenching line.
Allan was my friend, he cried, he begged them with his feet. Centuries of hatred, years that cannot heal.
Whether Sean literally said those words is less important than the truth that they carry behind it. He was killed by men claiming to act for Isaac. Yet, by killing Sean, they destroyed Isaac's friend. The violence just consumed itself. The eye for an eye philosophy resulted in the moral blindness of the whole community. Tommy Sands didn't write the song right away. The pain was just too fresh. The community was still too shell-shocked. It took a full decade for the experience to become art. Sands wrote There Were Roses in the mid-1980s, looking back at the summer of 1973 with a clear, painful distance. When Sands was ready to record the song for his 1985 album, Singing of the Times, he faced a tough decision. He wanted to use the real names, Isaac and Sean, to honour his friends. He got the family's permission, like I mentioned, but right before the release, one family changed their mind. The fear of attracting attention, of inviting more violence or vandalism, was still too real, which, from what we went over in the video, you can completely understand. These fake names allowed the true story to be told without putting the living in danger. It was a necessary act of protective fiction. After the Good Friday Agreement, once the immediate threat of violence lifted, the truth started to re-emerge. Singers like Cara Dillon, began performing the song using the men's real names, Isaac Scott and Sean McDonnell. This act restored the history to the men who lived it. This is what makes folk songs stand out from the rest. It's not just a song to listen to for background noise or entertainment primarily. For There Were Roses, it makes the listener remember that the victims of the Troubles weren't abstract political symbols. They were normal people who danced, planned weddings, went to bingo, and ultimately who were friends. Before you go, if you could please like the video and check if you're subscribed as well, I would really appreciate it. And a huge shout out to the channel members. Here's your names up on screen now. Thanks so much for your continued support. If you'd like to join them, hit that join button down there below, or check out the links in the description for more information. And check out the shop there as well, where there is an absolute ton of Irish music inspired bits and pieces that you can buy. Have a look when you've got time. And sure, if you want any custom designs done, please give me a shout and I can work with you to get the design that you absolutely love. Finally as well, if you'd like to join the Discord server and chat with all like-minded people about Irish music and Irish history and whatever else you want, there's a link in the description there as well for you. But look, that's it from me. I hope you all have a great day. Slán go fóill. Cheers.